Miami recruiting is on fire, and I don't think the surprises are done just yet. What's up, everybody? Peter Ariz here, Canes Pulse. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you aren't doing so already. Today, I wanted to walk us through this Miami recruiting class, where it's at right now, how we got to this point, and what they still have left looking forward here. Not that many spots left, but like I said, I think there's still a couple surprises to come here in this 2027 recruiting class. So we'll start, of course, with last night's surprise flip, a guy who was on campus this past weekend and coming once again this weekend, looking forward here. Coming back to Coral Gables, Jaiden Bryant, five-star flip, was committed to LSU. You're talking about unique power and athleticism, a blend there that you really just don't see much at the high school level. A lot of times at this position, defensive line, defensive end, you are projecting, hey, what's this guy going to look like a year from now, a couple years from now, when he puts the adequate weight, adequate strength on, right? You're looking at this guy's length. You're saying he's got some burst. It's a grown man's position, though, right? So that's why you don't see freshmen come in very often and blow the doors off things. One Miami Hurricane recently did that, and I think this young man, Jaiden Bryant, has a chance to be something similar. And we're talking about Ruben Bain, of course, who came in, was ACC Defensive Freshman of the Year. We've seen Mario Cristobal. We've seen that video played time after time where Mario presented it to him and told him, hey, I told you this is going to happen. Ruben said, you told me this is going to happen. And that sort of relationship and trust was shown right there on video. I think Jaiden Bryant, they've sold a lot of those same things to Ruben Bain. And looking at this player, he, like I said, you're not projecting here with this guy. You see on tape how he plays, the way he takes on blocks, the way he plays with relentless pursuit. He's a bigger bone guy. And sometimes with these big-bodied guys, you're saying, hey, once we get the baby fat off of him, he could be a special player. He's going to be moving a little bit differently. You see how this guy moves. You see that first step burst. You see him playing through, like I said, taking on these blocks and playing through it with that tenacity, with that aggressive nature that we saw Ruben Bain play with snap after snap. And again, the athleticism might be, and some people may say this is blasphemous, a little bit better than Ruben Bain in terms of just if you're going to line these guys up and test them. Bain, his bend, unbelievable, right? For his body type, very difficult thing to deal with. But again, Jaiden Bryant here brings a lot of those same traits when you watch how he plays on tape. And you add him in with these other recent commitments to Marco Jenkins, Noah Glover on the defensive side of the ball. Where this class is at right now is a consensus top 3 class, along with Texas A&M and Oklahoma, who both of those programs doing a great job. But you've got 18 commitments right now with only a handful of spots left here. But the momentum is at an all-time high, culminating with what we saw last night with that Jaiden Bryant flip. How have we gotten to this point, right? This is a culmination of 4 years' work for Mario Cristobal and his staff. And I'm not talking about 3 to 4 years of relationships, right? Maybe with a Nick Lanier, you could say that. Maybe with some of these local guys, you could say that. But what I'm talking about is you're talking about a 4 to 5 year project here where Mario Cristobal has rebuilt the image of a program that was very vulnerable when he took over. I have parroted this all off season, and I'm going to continue to say it because the results are speaking for it. What can you say to negatively recruit against Miami right now, other than maybe you're in the ACC, which, as my good friend 50 from Category 6 Sports pointed out to me yesterday on a live show, he said, well, my counterpoint to that is, who are these guys facing in practice every day? That's going to be where they're getting a majority of their work in. And the way it's getting built right now, line of scrimmage, we know what that continues to look like here is Jackson Cantwell was the number 1 left tackle in the country, number 1 tackle in the country. Miami gets him. Now you're bringing in number 2, 3 defensive end, however you want to look at it in the country, and Jaden Bryant, and you're still recruiting a DJ Jacobs. So what can you say negatively about Miami right now? The on-field success is there. Not just the national championship this past season, but 10-win season the year before that, and now trending for not only another double-digit season, but another playoff spot and another deep run here. Trending. We got to see things play out. But now you're looking at that 3-year cycle. It's a little bit different than just projecting forward when Mario, after his first 2 years, you still didn't have what you really wanted, right? It took Cam Ward and that team to kind of get it over the hump. And I don't even want to say completely over the hump because they still didn't make the playoffs. And they still dropped games that they shouldn't have dropped. But that was step one, phase one, in terms of how do you get this image where it needs to be. Boom. On-field success, we know what that is. Step two, NFL draft success. That's the next thing here that for more years than we may want to admit as Miami Hurricanes fans, that was not where it needed to be. You were not producing the first-round picks the way it needed to be produced. You were not producing these top 100 picks the way it was supposed to be done. And part of that's recruiting, part of that's development. You can throw that out the door now. Even with the way the transfer portal, people may say development, you don't need it anymore. Akeem Mesidor was a transfer, but he was here for how many years, right? I would say he was developed at Miami. Ruben Bain obviously came from the high school ranks. Francis Mauanoa came from the high school ranks. And you got 3 different stories there. You've got the 5-star in Mauanoa. You've got the underrated local prospect in Bain. And then you've got the transfer guy in Akeem Mesidor, all first-round picks. Cam Ward the year before that, right? And I think we're going to continue to see that be a trend here moving forward. Multiple first-round picks a year. That's got to be the standard of Miami. So the last 4 or 5 years for Mario has been breaking down those barriers of what other programs are going to do to recruit against Miami. And this goes without saying, Miami's NIL program is as strong as any. Hey, I love people out there saying, oh, Miami's paying big money for recruits. Miami's doing this and doing that. Everyone's watching Miami's pockets. Guess what? I'd much rather be in Miami's position right now where they do have the ability to do that on top of very strong relationships that are being built by the coaching staff with these guys, on top of the recruiting pitches that have real merit to it. So people can get mad all they want, even though we understand a lot of it may not even be true, but I'd rather be the ones who know what to do with the money rather than figuring out left and, as we go along, what are we supposed to be spending money on? Because guess what? Last year, people said Miami overspent for Jackson Cantwell. Most important position in the game outside of the quarterback spot, many would argue. It looks like a pretty good, he hasn't played a game yet, but I would say that most coaches around the country, if they had funds available to put towards it, they would have said that's a darn good investment right now. So maybe Miami is spending money. Let's not act like other programs across the country aren't spending money either. It's just a very dangerous thing where you compare a strong NIL program with strong results, strong pitch, the location, that is Coral Gables and Miami, that, again, people can hate all they want about the attendance and it's not a real college town. That's fine. You can have all that because I know what the city of Miami, I know what Coral Gables can sell when these families come down here from all across the country as Miami does recruit nationally. So that's how we've gotten here, right? That's how you now have what would be the highest rated class in Mario Cristobal's tenure. Going back, 2023, first full year, number 7 class. 2024, number 4 class, which if you go back to that class, there's been a lot of hit and misses, but I will say, Blunt, Lightfoot as big parts of that recruiting class, and Justin Scott, right? So those guys are the foundation of your defensive line, and that was a class now from 3 years ago. That's what happens when you recruit at a high level in the trenches, though. You see the results 2-3 years down the line. So number 7 class in 2023, number 4 class in 2024, number 14 class in 2025, strong portal year that year, and then number 9 class, and I'm going off of the 247 composite, which encompasses all the rankings. So this is the composite rankings. And again, you've had one top 5 class there back in 2024. This would be, as I think there's a very good chance this ends up, this is, I would say, a close to a lock as a top 7 class. Good chance it's a top 5 class when it's all said and done, right? Because we forget there's still other programs who are going to be making some moves around Miami. And I mean, I would say that you're looking good to finish in the top 3 here, especially if you finish off here with some of the guys that I'm going to talk about here in a second. But that's how we got here. It's been a 4-year effort to get to this point. It's a national recruiting effort by Mario and the staff, and the dividends are being shown now in, year 5? Year 6? This would be his 6th recruiting class. I know he had a recruiting class in 2022, but that was, had a couple weeks there to get things together coming off of the Manny class. So I don't really count that one. Now, where is this thing headed? Meaning, what is left in the class? You have 18 commits right now. We've heard all along. This is going to be a smaller numbers in terms of the class. Let's look at the needs, and then I have a couple wild cards here as well. The needs, what you need is you need another wide receiver, which is that going to be Eli Woodard coming off of his visit last weekend? Cal is very much in the mix. They have his high school quarterback right now committed. So does that become a factor? And Cal has a nice class right now, top 25 class in the country. Quentin Hale committed to USC. We haven't heard as much there recently, but we know Miami's continuing to try to work there. Trey Moore committed to Washington, which I've been mentioning, unfortunately, on the Discord for a few weeks now that I believe Washington was very much more in play than people realized there. They were not only giving him a great NIL package, which Miami would have done as well, but selling to him as being a feature point of that offense. And Washington has done a tremendous job producing wide receivers the last few years into the NFL. So more top-level first-round, second-round picks than Miami's had at that position. That's not the end-all, be-all, but it's definitely, I think, a factor in things. So Trey Moore goes to Washington. I'll throw this out there. I don't think Miami's done recruiting Jaden Upshaw, wide receiver from Alabama. Dalen Upshaw's cousin, who's on the roster, and I think going to have a solid year for Miami. Could be a really big breakout player. But Jaden Upshaw committed to Texas A&M. Miami felt like they were in a very good position earlier in the recruiting cycle. I don't think that one's completely done. Would not shock me to see him emerge as a guy who visits Hard Rock Stadium for a game this season. So that's one I'm watching. But Eli Woodard, I think, continues to be the guy that Miami would love to get done. I think they really would have liked to get it done last weekend, so Cal couldn't linger. But we'll see what happens there. Jaden Upshaw is a name that I'm going to continue to monitor there without a doubt. So you need a wide receiver. You need a tight end in this class. I think it's been a bit of a disappointment the way that position's played out this cycle. Jackson Dollar going elsewhere. Jordan Karhoff going to Virginia Tech, right? Those are guys that you'd like at both of those spots. Anthony Cartwright coming in from Detroit this weekend, a guy that's been on campus before. Looks like they're circling back around on him, right? It seemed like it had cooled a little bit because of an injury, but is he the guy? Does that get done this week? And I think there's a decent chance that's the case. So you need a receiver, need a tight end, you need a safety. Is it going to be Andre Hippolyte, North Miami Beach, visiting on June 12th? Tashawn Poole from Georgia visiting June 19th. And as I know, Will Harris has been working very hard there to get Miami back in the mix, and he announced a few days ago that he's going to be visiting, like I said, June 19th. Hippolyte's recruitment's been quiet because those North Miami Beach guys don't handle the process the same way that a lot of guys do normally in 2026 here, but it's probably going to be one of those two. So that's 3 right there in terms of receiver, tight end, safety. That would get you to 21. Few wild cards here, right? Caden Henderson is a luxury piece if you get him at linebacker. We see the push Miami's making not only on social media, but he was here this weekend. And if you guys remember, I said last weekend on this channel, Canes Pulse, again, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, that I felt that Miami was going to be having a big move with Henderson out of his official visit last weekend. It seems like they've done that. Now, can you carry that momentum into, he has still some stuff lined up here, Texas A&M really being the threat in that one, but that is a luxury piece for Miami. You take him no matter what. We're talking about these numbers, and you're not going to have that many guys. If you get those 3 positions filled, receiver, tight end, and safety, you're taking Henderson. You take him no matter what the situation is. We understand that. But another wild card here, Myson Johnson Cook at running back. My theory here is this. Miami has 4 talented backs, and I don't want to say that Chris Wheatley-Humphrey is not talented. I think it's phenomenal that he stuck around. I think he could be a mix. He could be in the mix of special teams, and the way injuries happen at running back, knock on wood, but he could be a guy who plays, and he's good enough to be a running back in Miami. But we've got 4 guys right now that we all talk about in terms of Mark Fletcher, Marty Brown, Jordan Lyle, and Gerard Pringle, who all expect to get carries. My theory is that you, as Miami as a staff, will have an idea late in the season, late in the recruiting cycle, on who's going to be back or not. At that point, you have an idea that, hey, 1 or 2 of these guys, for whatever reason, are not going to be here next year. We then have some more money to play with, and you know exactly who's who, and you know Fletcher's gone after this year, but there could be 1 or 2 other guys that leave. I think at that point, you have more money that's not going to be tied up for the previous year. You start to have a clearer idea of things. And then you can say, all right, let's put this towards Myson Johnson-Cook. And right now you have Ty Keys committed. They love him. I mean, he's an absolute stud guy who has great size as well. Myson Johnson-Cook is obviously a little bit of an outlier in terms of the size-speed combination there. But Keys is a big-time baller. I'm just saying, though, that would be one that I watch as a wild card here, as you have a better idea of how money lines up throughout the season. The other thing I would say is we know that Miami's big on senior evaluations. The tackle spot, offensive tackle spot, is something that I really believe they're going to continue to do their homework on. You have Tyler Ford committed from Georgia, but he's a guy who could also play interior offensive line. Jacob Hawks from the JUCO level is now on campus, so they'll know what they have in him, right? And if they think that he's essentially going to be, I think, a guy who takes, maybe he plays, but is getting almost like a redshirt year, and you can really see a year, in the spring, not a full year from now, but 7-8 months from now, what you have there. And then they'll know what they have as they get into camp and into the season with him. So essentially, I think they're going to continue to do some evaluations there at tackle. Maybe go flip a guy who's committed to another school right now that Miami could kind of flex their muscles a bit. And, we've seen it at J.J. Dunning, and we saw with Milan Paris last year, committed to Iowa State and Kansas State. So those guys, or maybe it was Kansas for Dunning, and I apologize if I misspoke there. But that's a position Miami's going to continue to work on. So I think that's a potential wild card, because outside of Ford, you might want to take another tackle there. Now, looking forward even more, looking at how his class is playing out, looking at the guys who've gotten, you got Jaiden Bryant, you're going to continue to recruit DJ Jacobs, which if they pull that off, to me, that's the greatest coup in Miami Hurricanes recruiting history if you get the top 2 defensive ends in the country in one class. Greatest pool if you could get those guys in Miami Hurricanes recruiting history. I will repeat that right there. But in my opinion, and it's my opinion, but I also just think it's pretty logical when you look at how this thing plays out. You are going to probably have to spend in the portal on a big-time D tackle. And we've talked about this before. It's difficult position to go get a guy because it's going to be very expensive, and you're going to have a lot of competition. But let's say Justin Scott comes back, right? Moten's gone, but let's say Justin Scott comes back, which I think with a good year could be gone. But you're going to need another primetime player. Can Keyshawn Stansel be that in a year? I think he's going to be an awesome player, but you look at even Justin Scott, who was a top 5, top 10 recruit in the country, he was not a full-time starter at Miami last year as going into year 2 as a sophomore. He had to work his way in there, David Blay injury, and as the season went on, Scott became the man, and I think there's a chance that he kind of cements himself as a first-round sort of pick after this season. But you're going to need some guys there. I expect a couple of these guys from that last recruiting class to step up as contributors. I expect a Jarquez Carter, who played at Ohio State last year, to step up as a really, really nice piece to this defensive line. Keona Davis coming over from Nebraska. I think a lot of I think he could be an answer for a lot of the questions we're having in terms of some of the depth stuff at defensive line behind Moten and Scott. But I feel very, very good about the future of defensive end. You got Blunt and Lightfoot, multiple years of eligibility. I'm not going to sit here and guess what they do after this year, but you got to think at least one of those guys is back after this year. You've got Hayden Lowe. If things continue to trend in the right direction there, I still have huge high hopes for his career at Miami. Herbert Scroggins was a nice rotational piece as a freshman last year. You have DeAnthony Lafayette. You have Ashari Charles who came in last year. You got to think one of those guys becomes a solid player for Miami who can get you some good snaps out there. Booker Pickett is in his second. He's a second year, third year sophomore, so he'll have a couple years of eligibility left here. So I feel and then you have Jaiden Bryant that you're committing a lot of funds and resources to. So I feel very good that you're not going to have to go outside of what you really recruited there in terms of the portal, the same way you had to when you went to get Damon Wilson this year. But defensive tackle is one that I think they will be spending big on in the portal looking forward. I'm pumped up, man. If you guys can't tell right now, I love where this recruiting class is at. Again, this is 4 years worth of work for Mario to get this place, this University of Miami program, in a spot that was, you can't recruit against it. It's a very, very difficult spot to recruit against. So if people are going to accuse Miami of spending more money, that's how they're getting the guys. These other programs better get their money up, because I don't know how else you're going to beat them. If we're outspending you and we're out recruiting you, it's a very, very dangerous world for college football, man. I'll tell you that much. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Go Canes.